Hello, my name is Jim, and we're going to talk about MPF conditionals. Now, I have a couple slides that I'll go through, and then I'll go through some code to show you examples. First off, what is this all about? So you got prerequisites, what I expect you to already have installed and know, and then some basis of conditional logic covering Boolean logic, integer comparison, and string comparison. And then we'll cover some use of machine and player variables in conditionals. And then we'll also use event arguments in conditionals. And lastly, we'll cover some troubleshooting. So first off, the prereqs, you need to have MPF installed, Python installed, and a developer environment, so something to be able to code in. And you also have to have some code. There's some tutorials out there on how to set up a basic pinball table, so hopefully you followed that already. And you'll also need to have an understanding of events and how to use the MPF monitor to basically test and see how things are going. First off, conditional logic in MPF is pretty simple. It's just if-then logic. So if this event is received and the conditional statement is true, then do the following. So you'll see the MPF format. On the left-hand side of the colon, you'll have an event that you're listening for, and then you'll have these brackets, and the conditional will have to go in there. If it's true, then you're going to do the thing on the right. If it's inside an event player, you're going to do an event. And if it's inside something like a show player, you're going to do a show. So an example is if I had a shot that was hit and I wanted it to only start a mode if the current player's name was Jim, then I would say shot underscore hit, have the curly brackets, current underscore player dot name double equals. You can't do single because that means you're setting a variable. Double equals means you're testing it for equality. And you're going to look for the string, so you have the double quotes, Jim, and then on the right hand, you start Jim mode. All right. Next is Boolean logic. So this is all based on true or false. Computers have to analyze it as either an integer, a zero value, or one, but it also simplifies things that are non-zero. So if it's like a million or 200,000, it'll still see that as true. And with that Boolean logic, you can compare two values. You can also add in mathematical operations and do a whole bunch of other things to make it a really complex condition. First off, you have comparison of integers, and you're just looking for whether they're equal to each other, not equal to each other, greater than, less than, or greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. And then if you ever wonder which one's which, just remember the alligator eats the bigger one. So if it's less than, he's going to eat the one on the right. If the first one is greater than the second one, he's going to eat the one on the left. String comparison, you just do the double equals and the quotes. So you have a string variable on the left, double equals, start your quotations, put your string text in there, and end with the double quotation. This is used in carousel selection and MPF where you can get a string out of it. All right, next is mathematical operations. These are all the operators you can have inside a conditional. So you can add, subtract, multiply, divide. You can do exponents, modulus. That is just the remainder when you do a division operation. And then there's XOR, and if you need me to explain that, then yeah, you probably already know if you're looking to use that one. Not, it just inverts the value. So if it's false, the input is false, the output is true. If the input is true, the output is false. And it's just like in English where both the first and the second have to be true for the result to be true, and or is either one has to be true, or they both can be true in order for the result to be true. The other thing you need to know about conditionals is the order of operations, and this is the same as in mathematics with PEMDAS. So you do whatever's in the parentheses first, you do exponents next, then you multiply and divide. You also add and subtract after that. Multiply and divide are at the same priority, so it's going to take whichever's on the left first, and then it will do the remainder after that, going to the right. And the same with add and subtract. Those are at the same level of priority. All right, what can you compare? You can take machine variables, and there's built-in ones and user-created ones. The built-in ones are something like player one score. User created ones are whatever you need that you usually want to maintain in between games or in between players that are not going to be changing, or yeah, just something that's associated with the machine level and not the player level. And the way you use it is in the conditional, you just type machine dot and then the variable name. For player variables, it's similar, except you don't have to define it, but it helps if you do. It's usually good practice. If you don't define it, it's going to default to 0 until you actually set it. So if you're ever troubleshooting and it's not doing what you want, make sure that you initialized your variable. The way you use it is just current underscore player dot and then the name of the variable. On the right is some of the built-in player variables. And you can also use devices. So in your monitor, you'll see a list of all the devices. Some of the most commonly used ones that you want to use in conditionals is timers and counters. So you might want to get the ticks or the value, and you just use device.timers. The name of your timer and .ticks, or device.counters, the name of your counter, and .value. The other way that you can use a variable is if it's in an event argument. So a built-in one with spinners is when it goes inactive, you get that inactive event, and you get a keyword argument or kwarg built in called hits that'll count the number of times that it's spun around. And you can use that directly by just typing in hits, as long as the event is spinner underscore, exactly what I expected, what goes with that keyword argument. All right, troubleshooting. You want to trace through your events to make sure that they happen in the logical order that you're expecting. You're going to make sure that the event you were listening for fired off. If that did, you want to go next and inspect the conditionals to make sure that the value that you expected, if you don't see that second event that got fired off when you got it expected. So how can you check the values inside the conditional? Inside of the monitor, there's a variable monitor. So you can pull up those values and inspect them to see if they're the value that you were looking for. You can also, if you're doing a super complex conditional made of multiple parts, you can break it apart, make new events, and then kind of chain it from one to the next. Those are some ideas to do some troubleshooting if you run into problems. All right, we're going to step through some example code. So this is turbo time. And the first time we use a conditional is in the track carousel selection. It passes a string, or we save a string. It's not the only way that you can do this, but that was the way that we chose to use. And we just check for the selected track, check to see what its value is, and then we play a slideshow according to that value. Let's see what else we got. Don't really use it. Conditionals when you're defining things like counters or shots or profiles. I try not to use it in sound player, but other players you will use it in, like event player. Anytime you want to protect something, like you want to start your qualify modes, but only after you've done certain things. In this case, we want to make sure you pass driver's training before you can do drift mode and before diverters or cone shots are enabled. Also in turbo time, we allow you to do called shots, so you can use the steering wheel to select the shot you want to make, and if you hit that same shot, then you get a bonus reward of RPM. If you didn't highlight it but you hit the shot, you get 1K RPM, and if you highlighted it and you called the shot, you hit the shot, you get 2K RPM. Now we could have pulled out the common element here of the flashing the U-turn when you hit the shot. It would have put a third line in here. You wouldn't need a conditional since you're always going to flash it, but that would be 3 lines of code, and we just went with 2. Here we're adding 1K RPM, but we want to protect it. And we say that if it's less than or equal to 8, you're going to do one thing. But if you add 2K RPMs, you're going to do another thing. The reason we protect on 8 is we want to make sure we don't go over the value, the max value of 9. Here we play a different sound depending on which RPM level you're at. If you're at 7, it plays shift. If it is at 8, it says shift gears. And if it's at 9, it's more urgent and says shift gears now. Now, one common thing that you also see that I do is I have getters and setters where I will set a value once it's accomplished, and sometimes I'll reset that if needed. Like in this case with driver's training, once you hit the 4 shots, you've qualified, and then we unlock a lot more capability, like using the steering wheel. And you can see down in the variable player, here's the light settings that are done with conditionals too. In the variable player, we just have a simple action to set it to 1. So that's going to be true. There's some other ones that I will actually reset the value. So when you go and you select a track, you go into an active track mode, and we want to lock out some things. But then when you get out of that track, you finish the track, we want to reset it so that it will go back to the display it had before. So hopefully that gives you some insight into how you can use conditionals, the requirements for it, and the different um, arguments or machine player variables that you can use inside of it. And let me know if you have any questions. Hopefully this was helpful.